Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am waking up myself. I gotta get the water. This is Fight the Funk podcast, episode 34. We explore culture, we explore history, we are exploring mental health, and today we got Mike Yates, Mr. Mike Yates, a TED Talk and two-time TED Talker, Mr. Think Outside the Box. I think he is the Horseman was like a revolutionary thinker as far as bringing public schools to the working class and having people thought, you know what, we should probably teach our kids so they know so they can do some things with their life. I feel like Mike Yates is a version of that, where it's like, you know, hey, why do we do things the way we do it? Maybe we should like change this up, like change this up a little bit. So without further ado, man, I am so excited to have Mike Yates on this morning. Check him out also. What's up, Mr. Mike?
How are you, man?
How you doing?
Pretty good. Not bad. Had a long holiday break, which was nice.
I feel that, man. I feel that. So thank you for joining me this morning, man.
Yeah.
So what did you how did you kind of regroup during the holidays?
Oh man, I just spent a lot of time with my family. I have 4 kids and a wife, and so we were just in the house, hanging out, watching movies, having dance parties, random stuff. So can't really go anywhere, but just hanging around the house.
Yeah. So are you getting some of your ideas from your kids, like as you teaching them, and then y'all have dance parties at home, and you're like, hold up, wait a minute, I just toss something in there.
Right. Some, yeah. Like, right. I mean, my wife primarily runs, so we built the homeschool program for ourselves. Okay. And my wife primarily runs the program. But a lot of the ideas that I have come from just the work that I've been doing. And they come on the fly, right? And I've been fortunate that I've been in a space where I get to, for the last 3-4 years, where I just get to ideate. Like that's it's literally my job, and so yeah. Okay,
now how so explain a bit about what you do. Like so what, when it comes to the schools as they are, like and also some of your background.
Yeah. So I was raised the son of a teacher. And some of the things I say about school, my mom is like, she's like, why would you say that? But It's what it's what I believe. And so I also grew up hating school. I thought school was lame. I looked for the fastest way to get out of school. For me, it was a barrier. I felt like I had to get through it and then I could live my real life. And as I got older, I understand that was almost, it was a system. It was a system that I existed inside of. And when I got out of that system, I just had this hunger to change it. And so I did like everybody else would do. And I went to go be a teacher in a regular school. So I went, I was not certified. I did not major in education in college or anything like that. So I taught in a private school, a private classical school. And everybody in the school was really enamored with this model. They were like, classical education is so great. We only read books from the classical canon. And I was like, that is crap. That is stupid. Like, there's a lot of things about classical education that I love, but you're not going to tell me that the Odyssey is more valuable than Angie Thomas, like The Hate You Give. Like, you're not going to tell me that now. Like, and so, after 6 weeks straight of faculty meetings where our principal would open the Odyssey and read it out loud and people would act interested, I was like, this is awful. So I left to go work in a public school. I got certified through the New Teacher Project. I applied to Teach for America and I was rejected by Teach for America. My interviewer told me, she's like, these ideas that you have about school in the classroom, they're too much. They're crazy. And so, I bounced around public, private, charter school, looking for the right model, the right system. And then I realized I'm going to have to build the one that I want. So I started on my journey to build a school. And then I found a group of people that were already working on a school. They'd already had a school up and running. It was called Emergent Academy. So I joined that project. We rebranded it as Alpha. And Alpha is a school that uses adaptive learning software in place of direct instruction. So instead of having a math teacher, you're on a math app. And instead of having a science teacher on a science app, what we found at the school was incredible is that with only 2 hours of app work a day, we had students that were performing in the 90th and 99th percentile in the nation. Like extremely high academic achievement. But that wasn't even the coolest thing about the school. The coolest thing is that we could condense that into 2 hours a day. And the rest of the day, we could be, taking kids on tours of the Google building and building go-karts and going to the stunt ranch and like really creating a special school experience. So that space gave me a real, like, it not only let me know like, okay, it's possible to do school in a way that nobody sees, but it gave me this bullishness to say like, I don't care if you disagree with me. I don't care if you DM me and tell me that I'm crazy, because like you're going to go back and work in that same system as the drone that you've been in. And so after being at Alpha for a while, I always knew it was a temporary pit stop for me. Alpha serves the most affluent families in the city of Austin, which is like Silicon Valley 2.0. So it's all rich white people. And I was like, that's not me. It's not my community. So I left to go see what I could do on a larger scale and joined the Reinvention Lab at Teach for America. Which is why it's important to note that I was rejected by Teach for America 7 years ago for the same ideas that they've now hired me for.
Oh, wow. Comes full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Man. Full circle.
Now, when you were early on, like what kind of, because I think there's people get, like you are where you are now, but it's like there's a sacrifice early when it's just more of idea and feel like, because it's like that inner compass and you feel it, you're like, this ain't right, man. Like what was some of those kind of, like, is there one specific like fight or something that you had where it was like, I know I'm the sane one here, like what is this is, man, because you're rebelling against tradition and people are, they cling on to comfort and what they know, because the unknown is scary.
Man, that's a great question. That's probably, I don't think anybody's ever asked about that, but that's a great question. Okay, so there's two moments that stick out for me with that, and like I think the reason why I love this question so much is because I know for a fact I've been talking to them on Clubhouse and Twitter. Like, there are a lot of educators that are experiencing this moment of frustration and they don't know what to do with it because their context for school is all the same. Everybody's like, well, I just have to go talk to the superintendent maybe and go talk to. So I'll tell you, the first moment that I was teaching summer school in Fort Worth, Texas. And I had this student, his name was Craig. And kid was amazing. I mean, the dude's sneaker game was like wild. It was on point. Like, it was, and he was so I was teaching government and he was a high school junior trying to get ahead. Right. And I mean, like, he was one of the coolest kids in school. And I'll never forget. I was like, man, this dude is brilliant. Like, this kid is like I'm sure he was not like a genius on the IQ scale, but he was close to it. Like, this kid was brilliant. And obviously not a nerd, right? But so I remember I was like, yo, like, what are you gonna do after high school? And he was like, oh, I'm gonna go work at my dad's store. And I was like, why? I couldn't understand why. And so I started talking to him about college, and just he had never considered this like brilliant kid had never considered college. And I know it's really popular, like with all of these social media influencers, to say, don't go to college, like go get an internship with Gary Vee and then make six figures. Like, that isn't, like, first of all, for people of color, like, that's normally like those stories don't work that way. If you in like right now, before the college system implodes on itself, which I think it will in the next 15 years, but right now it's a good idea to go to college. So I was talking to him about college, and then his mom came up to the school and like literally cussed me out. And she was like, yo, my son is not going to college.
Dang.
And what was hard about it is that he wanted to go. Like, so he ended up essentially, like, when he turned 18, he was like, sorry guys, like, this is my life.
Damn.
Dude went to Brown University, and now he works at Tesla. Like,
he did it. He did.
Yeah, he did it.
Okay.
And so seeing that, what was so interesting to me is that it took one person to say, nah, dude, like, like, I'm going to present you with options, because nobody else in the system did that for him. And he told me, he was like, you're the first person that ever told me I could go to college. Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute. So it's like, so you're in the 11th grade. Nobody's told you. He's like, nobody. And so then the second thing that happened is that in that same school district, the average reading level of a high school junior is 4th grade. So most kids in the district just can't read. I was teaching a 6th grade class, and I had a student who had a very traumatic, very, very traumatic, like, I don't even want to get into it, but like, he had an extremely traumatic childhood, was living in a house with no running water, and he couldn't read. And his response to me was like, yo, Mr. Yates, he was like, I don't have time to learn how to read. I'm trying to survive. Yeah. And then he said, he looks at me and was like, but if I'm in school, like, can you teach me how to read? He's like, while I'm here, if I got to be here, you teach me how to read. And I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know. Like, I was teaching a history class. I was like, I don't know how to stop everything. So the thing that I stumbled across on the internet was this adaptive learning platform called Newsela. And basically so Newsela is just a bunch of articles on anything in the world. You type in anything and you find articles, and they make them, they edit them so that they're in student-friendly language, like, so students understand them. And they have every article they have it basically every reading level from kindergarten on up to 12th grade. So every day this kid came to my classroom, I was like, don't worry about this history stuff. You're going to do this app. And I just basically left him alone. And to this day, he's like, yo, Mr. Yates taught me how to read. I was like, I did not teach you how to read. The app taught you how to read. I just put you in front of it. And it was total accident. But when I saw after a year, basically, really basically like 5 months of him doing this app every day for 20 minutes in my classroom, he went from like not being able to read at all to like, oh, I want to read the Divergent book series. Right. And and to me, that was a stark change. Like, to everybody, it was like stark. And, I tried as best I could to divert the attention away from me. People were like, oh, you taught Angel how to read. I'm like, no, like, and I realized that we care in education way too much about the teacher as the hero of the story, when this is not the case. And, from here, it was really this kid's hard work and dedication and that app. And that's when I learned something really, really special about about how kids learn.
Yeah.
And I guess in that story, the fight that happened was with my administration when they were like, wait, but he was supposed to be learning geography. And I was like, reading is more important. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, what I feel like that's where the disconnect between, like when I talked about it before, is like you get these traditional way to do things.
Yep.
But when you're looking at somebody in front of you, and you know in your heart of hearts that traditional moment, like that's not going to fit this person in this situation.
Right.
And it's like, so, and part of that is a certain level of like, yo, if I'm here to teach, then there's a fluidity to that. There's an organic nature to that, to actually reach this kid. And then, and as you're talking, is like Black and brown kids and poor kids in general is like, you don't have the same conversations.
Right.
And in 10th grade, 11th grade, the conversation is more of, where are you going to go to work at? Mm-hmm. Where are you going to, are you going, if you have an opportunity to work for your mom and dad, are you going to go to, when I was young, it was Hills College was the thing. Hills College, UPS, like that was our conversation. Yeah. Like, hey, can you get that job at UPS, man? You gonna hook it up? You gonna hook it up with UPS job? Like that was our college.
Yeah.
And I think that's the to change the culture around that, where when you have friends of different cultures and different races, different backgrounds, like I've always been blessed in that way. So I would go to my friends who I had a Chinese friend and Chinese American friend, and he was like, and he would tell me what college, I might get to Stanford, I might go, and I was like, wow, this is totally different.
Yeah,
totally different.
Yeah.
Or I would go talk to the golf kids, and then they would say the same thing. They would be like, yeah, man, I'm trying to decide, but I'm not going to go to university. I might go to UC, and then I go back to my homies, and it's like right back to like, man, I'm just trying to. I might get my GED.
Right. Exactly.
and just hit these streets, man. Start grinding.
Yeah.
It's like completely different. Completely different.
Absolutely.
Now, how do you address survival mode? Because with most kids that have challenges in the home, that have challenges like with their living situation, and that they're going through, they're experiencing some level of trauma every day. Like, how do you combat that? Like, how do you even begin to sit down and teach with that kind of kid that's going through that?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, my take on this is that all of this educational content comes out in the wash, right? So I also never taught tested subjects. I always taught history and geography and stuff like that. So I had more room to be able to tell a kid like, yo, like take a nap, right? Like I had a student who kept falling asleep in my class, and I just one day I just sat down with them. Everybody was working on stuff. I was like, yo, man, like, why you keep falling asleep? I didn't, they train you to do all of this, like pull him out in the hallway and ask him if he's okay and ask him if he's sick. I was like, nah, like, I was just like, you keep falling asleep. What's up? And he was like, all right. So I work at Sonic when I leave school. I work at Sonic until 2 a.m. And then I go work at Walmart from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. I only get 2 hours of sleep a day. And then I got to be at school. And I was like, dude, you should have told me that. Right. So I basically was like, yo, here's this YouTube, this series of YouTube videos that is probably more exciting than most things that you're working on in most classrooms. And here's Khan Academy. Right. I was like, I gave him just the list of stuff. I was like, if you have time, if you're on the bus, like do this on your phone, right? Like just watch the video on your phone. Don't do nothing. Just watch the video, right? And I changed the stand. I moved the bar for him because, and everybody was like, you can't do that. Life's not. Yes, like I moved the bar for this student because he was living real life. Yeah. Right? And it, for me, it was more important for him to go forward than it was for me to place some like like analogous, like this very like strange standard on him. Like why enforce the standard on this kid and say he has to be treated like everybody else? He's not everybody else. He's working 2 jobs. Like and he's doing it so he can pay rent so that he can afford to have a place to sleep.
Yeah.
Right. So like, nah, like I was like, you can come take a nap in this class every day. Like, I don't know what your other teachers are going to say, but in this class, you come take a nap. I bought these stretching like yoga mats. I was like, you can go lay right behind my desk and take a nap if you need to. Just don't snore, because and what was cool about it is that nobody else in the class was like, well, if he's napping, I want to nap. Nobody else did that, because the material that the way that the class was structured was that I never lectured, right? It was always, there was always some project or some challenge or some game. And I mean, these are high school students. And so it was such a change of pace that most of the time he didn't sleep, but there would be days where he's like, look, I don't have it today.
Yeah.
And everybody took care of him. The class, like nobody dimed him out, right? Nobody complained about it. Everybody took care of him. And I told, I had one student that was like, hey, well, why can't I take a nap? I said, you got 2 jobs? So when you get 2 jobs, you can take a nap in my class, right? I was like, I don't even have 2 jobs right now, y'all, so I'm not gonna take a nap, But I think like when it comes to survival mode, like we literally have to move the bar for those kids. And like it is futile and stupid to say, and I think this is what's wrong with public school, right? Or not even public school. I'll say the industrial school system, which includes private and charter schools, is that you think you got to give everybody the same educational product. That's just not true, right? Like this guy's life, like he needed videos on the way to work, and he needed time to sleep during the day so he could be awake for his AP calculus class, which like the dude was in AP calculus, right? Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and so for me, I was like, you being awake in government, like, nobody knows American government anyway, and it's all stuff that you can find on YouTube. So I was like, just watch YouTube and then go be awake for calculus.
That's brilliant, man. And that brings me to my question of what's the difference between public schools and charter schools?
Well, if you ask me,
if you're like in your definition, because a lot of people, speaking for myself, people out there, it's like there's a haziness because Betsy DeVos and what she was doing in making private schools. So it's like, so what's the, how do we all benefit from what you're doing, from kids that are going to be in public schools, kids that are in charter schools, homeschooling?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is that there's no right system. Like I know students that where I was like, look, public school is the place for you to be. Right. Like there is no right system. There are great public schools. There are terrible public schools. There's great private schools, terrible private schools. I think, the analogy I give is like nobody ever goes to the grocery store and complains because there's too many varieties of bread. Like no one's like, what? I can get potato bread and I can get whole wheat. Like nobody complains about that.
Oh, no, I did that yesterday.
Well, I've never seen anybody go stand in the middle of a soda aisle and say there can only be orange soda on this aisle.
Do it all the time, dog. Do it all the
time. Right. But I mean, for some reason, we think schools should be that way. Like people get on the internet and they talk about how like private schools shouldn't exist. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, of course they should exist, right? Like, no, It's funny because we think that way about school, but we all of a sudden think we should have options for cell phone companies and we should have options for internet providers. Like people in my neighborhood on my neighborhood Facebook page, they're complaining because AT&T was the only internet provider, but at the same time they'll literally say you should get rid of charter schools. So here's the thing to understand about models of school. Really, so most private schools, public schools, and charter schools all actually are one model of school. They're not actually different. So private, public, charter, that's just a financial designation. So public school means that 100% of the funds for that school come from the government, essentially, from public funding. Private school means that 100% of the funds come from private entities or parents. And by the way, like private school does not always mean that you have to pay tuition either, It just means that the school is privately funded. So if I start a school and Oprah says, I'll pay for the operating costs and every single student that you have, then that's a zero tuition private school.
What?
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, but it's this like
it's like what she did in Africa. Like what country was that she was creating schools, like what a lot of what happens in
Oprah.
So that's an example of private school.
Yeah, right. That's like in some countries, like I lived in Colombia for a little bit. All the schools are private.
Yeah.
And not everybody pays tuition. Because the government in Colombia says, like, we will not provide school as a service for you. So like a business owner, look, Pablo Escobar like funded schools, like he built schools and paid for everybody. So people hear private school and they automatically go, oh, tuition. That's not necessarily true. Right. As a matter of fact, Oprah funds a school. There's a school in Atlanta called Ron Clark Academy. Technically, it costs $18,000 a year to go there, but the average family pays $40 a month because he has so many private sponsors that he's able to do that. Charter schools, that designation means that the majority of it's just a split, right? It's a 75-25 split. 25% of their funds are I always mix it up in my head. I can't remember, but 25% of their funds are from the state, and 75% of their funds are private. What that does for charter schools is that it theoretically gives them greater autonomy. Like it lets them make decisions on their own. There's a lot of misconceptions about private schools. A lot of people say private schools don't have to educate everyone where public schools do. It's not the way that actually plays out is that private schools, because they have a list of donors plus the state government looking after them, they kind of actually do have to accept everyone. And it's really hard to kick a kid out of school, period. But out of charter school, it's very hard to kick a kid out. And this is from working in a charter school. The other thing is that charter schools are obsessed about daily attendance. They're obsessed. If you go inside of them, they always have like on the wall, like, oh, we have 93% perfect attendance, right? So like there's not an incentive for them to kick kids out. These people want to know that butts are in seats. So all of those systems, though, public, private, charter, those are a part of what's called the industrial school system. The industrial school system was created. Horace Mann actually created the industrial school system at a time when the logical result of like finishing that system was that you worked in a factory because like I think Horace Mann gets a lot of like undue criticism. Like in the 1800s, working in a factory, like that was a good job.
That was the thing.
Yeah, like that was innovative. That like hearing like, oh, I can go to school and then get out of school and get a factory job and make money. Like, yes, like you're not a farmer, right? Like like, and so like you're not a blacksmith, like you're working in a factory. Like, you know, the problem is that model has just never changed. We've just preserved that model for the last 100 years. You know, homeschooling, it can look in a lot of different ways. I think the mistake I'm seeing a lot right now is that people are like, because that Horace Mann industrial school system has never changed, everybody imagines school that way. So if you stand in front of 1,000 people, right? Like we're on live right now. If I tell everybody close your eyes and picture the front steps of your school, 70% of you will picture the same front steps.
Exactly.
Like go ahead.
No, when you think of school, it's like you just think brick and mortar, the school classrooms, the lunch line. You know, it's like it just plays out over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's fun. It's really, really funny. I was talking about this last night because I'm watching Cobra Kai on Netflix.
You watching that?
I was not a huge Karate Kid fan, but I think the premise of the show is just hilarious. How they can't let it go. But there's a scene where this dude's like, he's like, yo, like I need a dojo, and he lost his brick and mortar dojo, so he starts one in the park, and he's like, no, a dojo is wherever the students are. And I'm like, yes. Yes. Like, a school is wherever the students are, right? And I think the pandemic is interesting because it's made us be really creative about where, when, and how we have school.
And I think that's a brilliant point because like one of the the teachings of last year is adaptability.
Yeah.
And those who have worked with more, like if you've known working with less, then you're highly adaptable.
Yep.
If you've always had things like the go a certain way and it's always been a nice framework, like you did the whole, I go to college, I go to work, I show up to work, and I get paid. I order my Amazon, I watch my Netflix or ESPN, and then the next day I go to work, plan my hotel, like my vacation. Like everything is very structured, and I feel what the teaching was last year was one of the main things was that how do you adapt?
Yep.
Like are you how when's the last time you worked out that skill, that muscle? And adaptability is a creative aspect to the human psyche.
Yep.
So such an important muscle to work. And I feel like you with everything you do is like you're bringing that adaptability. Now that I feel like that's the kid in us as well of like, how do you feed that part of you? Now with what I'm curious, man, like what kind of kid were you like when you were young? Like were you like shy? Are you out there talkative?
I was very talkative. I grew up in a house I grew up in a very pro-black house, and I went to school in very white areas of town. So I grew up in Houston, and my mom worked inside of Houston ISD, which is the biggest school district in the biggest state or the biggest city in the state. And like I could go to school anywhere in the district. So my mom was like, I'm going to send you to the best schools. Those schools were like in my elementary school, I went to school with like a U.S. senator's child, like some of the Houston Astros, like their kids went to school there. Like I'll never forget, like there's hurricanes in Houston all the time. Yeah. And one time the city flooded, and this baseball player who was like, I was a big fan. Jeff Bagwell, like he rolls up in this Hummer, and he's like, "Kids, get in!" And I get in, and I was like, "I'm in Jeff Bagwell's Hummer," but like it wasn't in my head. I said it out loud. And he was like, "Hey man, nice to meet you."
That's hilarious, dog.
Yeah, and so it was for me. It was very interesting growing up in those environments. So much so to where, like, when I went to high school and I had the ability to choose, I chose to go to school in a very mixed environment. Like I wanted all kinds of people, just because I wanted to be more comfortable. And so, I was very outgoing. I had my high school experience was actually it was awesome. Like not for anything that I learned, but for everything that happened outside and around school. I joined the speech and debate team, traveled the country doing speech and debate, and kids, like we were the most popular kids in school, like class president, homecoming king, prom king. Like I was all of those. And it was, it was great. So I also grew up as a challenger, right? Like I was taught that number one, that I had to speak up for myself in all instances. Like my mother she would never rescue me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like she was like, you need to go and communicate. So like I had a teacher that accused me of plagiarism, and she was like, you go fight it. She's like, go fight. And they worked in the same building. Like I went, it was in my middle school, and Miss McGowan in the 7th grade accused me of plagiarism. My mom was like, you go fight on your own. Yeah. And it served me really well, because by the time I got to high school, like nobody could mess me over. Right. Like I had this teacher in my freshman year. I was in AP English, and she kept asking me if I'm sure that I wanted to do this class. And I asked her, I was like, why do you keep asking me that? And she was just like, I just want to know. Like, I know you're into sports. I know you're into this stuff. And I was like, oh, are you insinuating that I'm like some sort of dumb jock? I was like, ma'am, I'm not even good at football. Like, I'm just on the team, right? Like, I played middle school football with a dude that ended up being in the NFL with Josh Josh Gordon, if you watch football.
Yeah.
Like, and our game plan was like give the ball to Josh in all instances.
So, every situation.
Yeah, like
yeah.
There was no other. It was him and this other dude. These guys were legit, and they went on to go play at high levels. When you play with that, like everybody's good at football. But when I got to high school, I was like, I suck at this. I'm not good at football. Like, I was a good basketball player, but I was like, man, I'm not a jock. Like, I don't know what's going on. And so I'd say, you know what, ma'am, like, I need you to meet me tomorrow in my dean's office. So she and my counselor and we talked about why I needed to switch classes because she was being racist or like, you know, like, but I learned that from just these reps of my mom doing it. So like as a kid, I was very hard to deal with from a teacher's perspective. Very, very hard to deal with.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like that now. I hear a lot of what made you who you are now, and that just in that short bit is like, oh, okay, I get it. You know, it's like that's also groomed as well. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, let me. This is my case. This is who I am, and then the plagiarism as a child, and I think that's to me, it's a universal experience. As a person of color, like you're always fighting against proving your intellect or proving your like, yeah, I did the work, or I'm not the criminal. It's like, or hey, yeah, I might just be talented. You know, it's like that. This is me, and I think there's a lot of and you go through that a lot, and I don't know if that has an effect, and I think a lot of times you go into adulthood. And you don't know that you're coming with that into different environments where you're is that I got to prove I'm right. I got to prove I'm correct. I got to prove I'm not lying. I got to prove all that. I'm proving. And I add such an extra element to it that doesn't have to exist.
Man,
now, how do you combat that? Like as far as just because you can see that in kids, you can see that is something to address.
I think for me, it's like I think people need to learn how to communicate their value. Like I'm hit with imposter syndrome all the time. Like there's sometimes where I can't believe that I'm in the position I'm in, but it's often my wife that reminds me, like, no, like you work hard, like you work really hard, harder than most people. And I think it's that, you know, like I had a situation recently where, you know, I was at Alpha where I worked. I built this public speaking program. And I had a parent, a very successful person, by most people's standards, very successful. You know, they asked me, they were like, hey, like what qualifies you to create a public speaking curriculum? And I was like, I don't know, Google me. Like, look it up. And they Googled me right there on their phone because they were like, oh, I guess I'm going to call you out. And they found TED Talks and a Forbes article. And all of a sudden the conversation changed.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that if you're doing the work, like if you're really, if there's really substance behind what you're doing, right? I mean, like I know people that, and I don't say names, but I know people that a lot of folks are following right now that they're straight up lying about who they are and what they're doing. And if you were to like press them, right? Like if you were to get them on a podcast and like start really pressing them, you would see that there's no substance. But anybody, like if you're actually doing the work, if you're putting in the sacrifice and the grind and you have expertise, and if somebody questions your expertise, literally make them Google you, right? My goal is, you know, because that I feel like that was a theme that kept happening to me my whole life, right? In the seventh grade, Miss McGowan said, you didn't write this paper. We put it into turnitin.com. It confirmed that I did write the paper, and she still failed me. I said, that's fine. I'm not gonna let that happen to me again. So from that day forward, from the seventh grade, I made sure that people knew my accomplishments. So when I got to high school and I was in the speech team, and I was gone, like we would often be gone. Like we'd leave on Thursday and like that was it. Like we'd have a tournament on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then we wouldn't get back to school till Monday. And this teacher asked me, the same English teacher, she's like, what what are you guys, why is it worth it? Why should I excuse you from my class on Friday? And I said, well, you can walk to the trophy case in the front of the school and see that it's filled up. Like that's why like you can, like, you know, and so I have made mistakes. I've been brash. And I've been rude to people at sometimes. So I've learned how to communicate in that way. But I think people should not be afraid to put your accomplishments on the table and let them speak for themselves. Like from the day I set foot in a classroom, I had these conferences with parents, and they would always ask me stuff like, "Oh," they start like, "Well, what's your background? Where'd you go to college?"
Yeah.
And that was a covert way of asking, like, how are you qualified, right? Because like I just turned 30, so I'm still young in my career, but I've always been a relatively young teacher. I started teaching at 22, so I had people asking me, and it's the accolade. It felt good to tell that parent, look, just Google me and figure out why. But I think that's it. I like for students and especially for teachers. Teachers have to stop letting parents and school districts abuse them, right? Like we have to. If you're doing work outside of this, I don't care if it's like I was in a clubhouse room and there was 3,000 people in there. Screenshot that and put it somewhere. And when somebody asks you, like, "Oh, why are you qualified for this?" Give them the screenshot, right? I think it's personal branding and all of that, right? Like you start looking for your next job the day you start your first job.
Yeah, actually, you just transitioned for me, man. I was just gonna ask you, like, I've been reading some of your posts about teachers should brand themselves.
Yeah,
and I think that's part of the adapting that you're talking about with modern time. It's like you got to adapt. So like, what is that? Break down like teachers brand yourself, yourself. Like,
There's a couple things, and I think the reason why I'm doing this is because I want people to be early adopters of this. And there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to say, this is worthless, but that's fine. The thing I think people need to understand is that like you're not going to beat Elon Musk and you're not going to beat Jeff Bezos. Like it's just the truth. There will be a day where the thing to do is to teach remotely or to be hired as a contract teacher, right? I just want people to know. I know because I've been in these conversations. I've been in the room in Texas right now. There's a group of billionaires, right? Like, why are all these people moving to Texas? Because there's about to be like historically futuristic innovation. So there's a group of Texas billionaires that have been meeting for months and months and months. Robert Smith, Elon Musk has been a part of this, Mark Cuban, right? And they're wanting to create a Hyperloop train that will take you from Dallas, Texas. So normally it takes 4 hours to drive from Dallas to Houston.
Yeah.
It will take you from Dallas to Houston in 45 minutes. It will take you from Houston to Austin in 20 minutes and from Austin to Dallas in 30 minutes. Like the reason why they want to do that is because Mark Cuban, who lives in Dallas, wants to be able to hire talent from Houston or Austin. Elon Musk wants to be able to hire talent from the others. So if location will be a thing of the past. So there is a world where all of those people who, by the way, have school projects that they're all working on, all except for Mark Cuban. So if Mark Cuban sees this, hit me up, dog. I'm moving to Dallas. But they all have school projects that they're working on. And I don't care how you feel about it. Jeff Bezos he's not going to lose, right? So Jeff Bezos Academy may pop up all over the place and you may be able to make 6 figures by teaching at Jeff Bezos Academy, even if it means one day you teach in Austin, the next day you teach in Brooklyn, New York, the next, right? And so you're going to need you're going to need to be able to say, why me, right? Pretty soon, teaching jobs won't be so easy to get. Right, even school districts are starting to crack down on who we're letting into the classroom. As we see that there's not only a teacher shortage, but there is a lack of good teachers.
Yes,
like I don't know what people think, but the event that naturally follows a raise in teacher, like if the federal government says teachers now make $60K out the gate. If you think that by being average or bad, you're going to get that job, you're out of your mind. right? Like it's not going to work. They're going to expect an unrealistic set of circumstances. So you have to be able to prove why you. The other thing is that, look, teaching is not forever. People move. And I can't tell you how many people have been reaching out to me recently that are like, yo, like I work in software, or I want to go work in this, but I feel like all I've ever done is taught and I can't pivot. And I'm like, oh, you just don't know how to leverage your personal brand, right?
Yeah.
And so the last thing I'll say about this is that the reality of the job as a teacher is that the job is unrealistic. And the reason why most people are so upset that it pays so little is because you're asked to do so much for so little. That means that you're asked to use a number of skills that you need to figure out how to communicate to other people so that you can accurately pivot and so that job opportunities come to you, right? My goal is to never apply for a job again, ever.
Yeah, I can share that goal.
Yeah.
I'm almost 40, man. You know, it's like
right.
I'm jumping through hoops. I'm done.
Yeah, like I'm never gonna fill it out. I don't want to use my resume, right? Like I recently transitioned jobs, and I did it on the strength of my personal brand. And I'll tell people, like, I don't I know that, like, things are testy, like with people financially, but I am only saying this because I'm telling you that this is not something that is respective to me. Thousands of people are doing this right now, and it's not like, this is not like a course or like this like hook line. I'm not like, pay me $99 a month. Nah, like don't pay me anything.
Exactly,
like all of this information is free. It's on YouTube. It's on podcasts. If somebody is trying to charge you, unless there's a short list of people that I would say like pay for that stuff. But if somebody's trying to charge you a lot of money for a personal branding course, I have never paid it. I've never paid for premium services. I don't have LinkedIn Premium. I don't have Canva. I don't do any of that. It's free. It's free to build your personal brand. And the thing I'll say is, I have gone from wanting people to recognize my work to multiple TED Talks for the last 4 years. So I left one 6-figure job for another 6-figure job. I have turned down television shows, turned down an Amazon Prime television show twice, right? Like, and it's not because I'm special, right? Like I'm doing the same work all of y'all are doing as teachers. We're in the same fight. And if you learn how to leverage what you're doing, what you're learning, what you're creating, like if you create a document or if you create a project, the worst thing you can do is put that on some server for your school and give your school ownership of your intellectual property. The other thing that you shouldn't do is put it on teachers pay teachers. No, like you should give it away for free and ask people to shoot videos and take pictures of how they're using your project. You should write an article about it. You should put it in a podcast, right? You should show up at TEDx and give a talk about it, right? Like use that project that you created to show your next employer why they need to come after you and not why you need to apply for them.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Now, I'm gonna let you go in a little bit. I know you got a lot you're doing.
It's been fun.
Yeah, man, it's dope. So I got an important question, man. It's very serious. Where is the yellow shirt with the little peacock feathers, man? Like I thought, I was waiting for one of these shirts to pop up.
What? I don't know what you're talking. What yellow shirt?
No, it's I think on your LinkedIn profile is like this like.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
It's in my closet.
All right.
Yeah.
I was like, where's the shirt at? Where's it?
I love that shirt. Yeah. I actually got that shirt from there's this African braid shop where I live, and it's important. They're imported from Sierra Leone, and I love them. So I have I have like this whole variety of them. I buy a couple like every month just because.
I knew it. I knew you had a shirt. I knew it.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been wearing solid colors mostly since I've been at home because it's hard with the camera. Like, but yeah. When the world opens up, they'll be back.
Okay. All right. Sounds good, man. Sounds good. So what's your big like this year? I think it's Brandon, right? Like this year is that okay? And I when you were saying that, man, it made me think of one thing that could come out of this pandemic is the idea of because the really brilliant and talented teachers that like where there's always that one or two teachers that you remember your rest of your life.
Yep.
It's like now they can actually, there's no borders of who they actually teach now.
Yep.
So that whole idea of a rock star teacher, like that can be a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you said that, I was like, oh, I see it. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Like and pretty soon it's gonna be like, so there's a school that's popping up called Synthesis School.
Yeah.
Synthesis School, they'll pay you $150 an hour to teach.
Mm.
If Synthesis School starts a campus in New York and they start one in Texas, all of a sudden, like it's going to be super competitive. Mm-hmm. So you got to figure out, like, and that model is going to catch on. People are going to do more of it. So
now, for myself, because I'm always talking. One thing I'm always I always have an eye out as far as like kids that are growing up in poverty that won't get to be a part of the competitive schools.
Right.
Like, how do you combat that? Whereas like, because if these rock stars teachers are now going to get paid a Google amount of money, once again, it's like it creates a climate where teachers learn with underserved kids. They learn how to be teachers.
Yeah.
With kids that are viewed as have not a good chance of a really productive future.
Yep.
Like, so they learn and they go to the lucrative deals.
Yeah.
So it's like, is there a way to combat that?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think but it's going to take us, right? Like I'll just be very blunt. Like for the Black community, like we cannot expect white people to build schools that are going to serve our children, right? And my biggest learning from working at Alpha is like I had this realization very early on there, and I was like, they are never going to build this school. So this is where I'm from. This neighborhood called A-Leaf, right?
Okay, like, A-Leaf in the house. A-Leaf representing.
Yeah, A-Leaf, Southwest, A-Leaf, Texas. And I had this realization. I was like, they're never ever going to build a school in A-Leaf ever. The person that's going to have to do it is me. Right. And so like there's a guy that I think a lot of people should connect with. His name is Rashad Moore. Like I had a conversation with him. He was like, yo, in DC, wards 6, 7, and 8 are the lowest income wards. It's a 33 square mile radius. He was like, what if we built a McDonald's sized building every square mile of that 33 square mile radius that was a learning hub where students could, he was like, we can get people to fund it. And I was like, boom, right there. Like if we figure out how to find and finance and support those projects, then all of a sudden our people, right? Like Black people, low income students, Black and brown children, they're creating quality schools. So what I am working on is two things in 2021. The first is my podcast and personal branding community. I particularly want to inspire teachers of color to build a personal brand that is big and strong so that you can be in the room with billionaire funders so you can pitch your idea to them. And then the second thing I'm working on is a Black School Founder Fellowship. So I want to create a program. There's a program called Founder Gym. And I'm super inspired by what Founder Gym does because, and just a short plug for them. If you're an entrepreneur, I think you should check them out. The founder of this organization was a former teacher. But what's interesting about them is that there's 90 women in the history of the world that have ever raised more than $1 million in venture capital. 90. And of those 90, 11 of them have come out of Founder Gym.
Dang.
Right. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, what they're doing is working for entrepreneurship. But if we can capture that, if we can create that and say, okay, I'll take you as a 5-year teacher and give you the tools, the resources, and put you in the room with the people that can fund a school project where you can pay your bills better than you could when you were a teacher, and you can build a phenomenal school in your community. I think most people would do that, right?
Yeah.
I'm on Clubhouse all the time, and I hear people like, oh, I want to start my school, but I don't know how. And I'm like, great. So then we'll put the resources in place. We'll teach you how to build a school. And now in Atlanta and in DC and in LA, and I was listening to Vince Staples talk about where he grew up. And he was like, yeah. And he said it. He was like, he said the liquor store should have been a library, but it wasn't. And I was like, interesting. But like, what if we could buy the liquor store and it was a library? You know,
yeah.
And And so like he named the street. So I was like looking on the street, and I was going down on Google Maps Street View, and I was like, this building is abandoned. This building is abandoned. I was like, what if one of those was a learning center? And all of a sudden, like young Vince Staples could go to that learning center, and he could be making, like, he could make music as a student, right? Because that's a pathway that we offer. So I think there's a world that where these innovative school options are available for everybody, but the tech community is not going to save us. The education community is going to be our community. We have to do it ourselves.
That's a great statement, man. Well, I want to leave it on that note. That's now where can people find you in your work?
Twitter and LinkedIn. My Twitter handle is @just Mike Yates, and then LinkedIn, you just search Mike Yates. Okay,
dope, man, dope. Hey, thank you so much, Mike Yates, for dropping in to Fight the Funk podcast, man. It's been a pleasure. And I'm gonna go get me some coffee, and and you keep doing your thing, man. You are an inspiration, and I love everything you're doing, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
For sure, man. I have a good one.
All right, see you.
All right, Mike Yates. Now I don't know how to end this, Mike.